this room tonight. I've been to lots of E.A. Anderson lecture series. I usually am sitting in the back. And I think when I think through the years that we had so many good people come in and speak to give the students a wider experience and a wider understanding of the world in which they're going to be stepping out into. And so it's a humbling experience for me to be here, because I never expected to be one of the speakers. One speaker that we had that really stands out in my mind was June Rogers. She was the wife of the captain of the Challenger. And she did such a good job here, and I got her to come back and talk to the women at camp meeting time. I was really proud of that. And then she wrote a book called Silver Linings. If you ever get a chance to read that, do it, because it's a very special book. What's in a name? That which we call a rose, by any other name would smell as sweet. Romeo Montague and Juliet Capulet meet and fall in love in Shakespeare's lyrical tale of star-crossed lovers. They are doomed from the start as members of two warring families. Here Juliet tells Romeo that a name is an artificial and meaningless convention, and that she loves the person who is called Montague, but not the Montague name and not the Montague family. Romeo, out of his passion for Juliet, rejects his family name and vows, as Juliet asks, to deny his father and instead be new baptized as Juliet's lover. Juliet is trying to make her infatuation for her family's enemy okay, because it all boils down to nothing more than a name. But it turns out that someone's last name means a whole lot more than she realizes. What is in a name? The answer is quite a lot. A name is a word or set of words by which a person, animal, place, or thing is known, addressed, or referred to. What's the first thing you do when you meet a new person? You tell them your name. Your first and last, please. I want to know your whole name when we are introduced. I might have gone to school with your grandma. Is that important to know? It is for me. Knowing last names has brought me in touch with former students and college classmates, and has been a joyful happening in my life. So please pay attention to that last name. What's in a name? Our name identifies us, whether we like them or not. I hope you like your name. I didn't like mine. When I was about 8 or 9, we moved into a new neighborhood, and I met another little girl my age, and we got acquainted. And I told her my name was Marie, which is my middle name. And that was fine. Her mother, of course, wanted to know my name, and I told her my name was Marie. And things went along pretty well until our mothers met. It didn't take long for my mom to realize that the Marie they kept talking about was her very own daughter. But I loved that family. They called me Marie the rest of the time I was in their neighborhood. So our names identify us, and we are responsible for what's in our name. If there is a negative aspect to it, and oftentimes there is, with God's help, we can make it a positive. Remember, you are your company's best advertisement in how you do your work. People will judge your employer and the company by your actions. For almost 13 years, I was office manager for our campus Collegedale Church. It was important to me that you might be calling for the very first time and would judge the pastor and the staff and even the church by our conversation. So I tried to be the face of the pastoral staff whenever we got a phone call. I also learned how trusting or forgetful our members could be, because every once in a while, one of the members would see me down at the village market or in the post office, and they would say, "Oh, Evie, are you going back to the church? Would you please give this to the treasurer?" And then they would place in my hands their tithe check or even just a check, and trusted me to take it back to the church office, which I did. Need to be dependable. My father-in-law used to have several pet sayings, and one was, "There's nothing so sure as change." And one of the things that changes the most often is a name change. People marry, buildings are torn down and rebuilt, and organizations are reorganized. Such was the case of our church women's ministries. The North American Division in 1983 established an Office of Human Relations, from which emerged the committee named Women's Commission, to help church leaders become more aware of the needs and concerns of the woman in the pew. 6 years later, I was asked by the Georgia Cumberland Conference to be Women's Commissioner for the conference. I wasn't sure about the name. Thought it a bit boring, really. I knew what a commission was. My husband was on the commission, but a church commission just didn't stir me out much. However, I did say yes, rearranged my time at the church office, and we had our first conference women's weekend retreat in 1989 with about 130 attendees. Things were moving pretty rapidly in this, in these three areas of the NAD Office of Human Relations, and then the Southern Union and the Georgia Cumberland Conference Women's Commission. And by the spring of 1990, I found myself directing the Southern Union and Georgia Cumberland conferences. And working with those activities. Now, this put me on the NAD Women's Commission Committee, which met at headquarters in Washington. I was happy to see we would be talking about a name change at our next meeting. Now, changing a name always seems to elicit much discussion. And we had a difficult time finding a name that gave meaning to what we were doing, ministering to women at the weekend retreats and in our churches in many different ways with featured speakers, workshops, prayer and Bible study, friendship times. Finally, in our discussion that was going on forever, one commissioner spoke up and said, you know, it really doesn't matter what we call ourselves. It's our activities, it's what we do that will ultimately define our name. And so Women's Commission became Women's Ministries. And since that time, all over the world, Women's Ministries has been the nucleus around which lives have been changed for the better. I've seen church rifts disappear, former members have been reclaimed, new members are joining, marriages have been healed, and I still have a note from one member that attended the retreat here in Georgia Cumberland Conference one year, and it said 3 years before she had come to the retreat planning to commit suicide. God spoke to her at that weekend retreat, and so she was still here 3 years later, and we praise God for that. Now understand that you are here because you are in the junior or senior year, that some of you are going to be entering an internship. How many of you are going to be doing that? Good. And some have already obtained job status. That would be nice. Maybe, oh, there you go. Congratulations to you. First jobs can be a bit daunting. My first job after obtaining my Social Security card was emptying an old cannery building of empty cans, working with women much older than me. After moving thousands of cans, I knew I didn't want to do that job the rest of my life. We walked in this building and it was just full of all these empty cans, and then they gave you a fork that had 4 or 5 prongs on it, and you would put that in the big pile where they had them stashed, and then you would take that and put them in another pile. And we did that for, a month, too long. Then first jobs can also be exciting. It has all worked out exactly as you hoped it would. First jobs can be disappointing. Your office is a little corner of the shipping department, and you are assigned tasks with less responsibility than you had in school. And your title is not what you were led to believe it would be. Mention the words garbage can man to me, and I immediately see in my mind's eye a tall, good-looking young man, neatly dressed in clean clothes with a cheerful demeanor, and on his shoulders a garbage can being carried out to his very clean-looking truck. This young man gave new meaning to garbage collector, giving class and dignity to the humble task of collecting garbage in our neighborhood. His name? You may have known him or heard him on your story hour as Uncle Dan. I knew him as student Chet Dameron in 1958. If a job is worth doing, it is worth doing well, to the very best of your ability. Sometimes jobs can be a total surprise, like doing something you never imagined you would be doing. And it's interesting how the daily choices we make influence our future down the road. My senior year in the academy, I could choose whether to take Spanish from a well-known missionary in South America versus shorthand. Now today, shorthand isn't even taught, but the Spanish language certainly is. But I chose shorthand. However, it was my good grade in shorthand class that helped me get a job the next year in college working for the college representative, who visited all the academies in the Union. He was remarkable at remembering all our names from all the academies. And it was really nice to be on campus and have someone call out to you and know your name. And that was a talent that very few people had. Well, I don't think, most people can't remember that many names, but he did a great job. A. Orville Dunn. We got to college and my choices, I thought, was either nursing, teaching, or being a secretary. I wasn't very good in science. And nursing was not out of the question. Teaching, I wasn't sure about. I hadn't met a teacher that really inspired me, I guess. So I ended up in the secretarial department. And then I worked in the registrar's office, and the last semester, I was lab assistant for the shorthand and office machines labs in the secretarial department. And sometime during that last semester, I noticed this big tall man coming in to talk to the teacher. And later I learned that he was an academy principal looking for someone to teach typing and shorthand and be registrar for 1 year. There was just 3 of us graduating that year. One was getting married, the other person already had a job, and I was fairly certain I would not be asked. My GPA was nothing to brag about, for sure, and the only education class I had taken was educational psychology. And I guess I was just hoping that when I graduated, I'd find a job somewhere in the office. So I was totally surprised when he asked to talk to me. The academy was seeking accreditation, and apparently the teachers had to have taken the classes in what they were teaching. And the present teacher's degree was in psychology, not secretarial. And she needed to go back to college and take typing and shorthand classes. He offered me the job. It would be just for 1 year, and I could hardly believe it, and wasn't all sure that I could do it. But my college teachers thought I could do the job, so with their encouragement, and with not a little trepidation on my part, I agreed to teach and be registrar at Indiana Academy for 1 year. That fall, I arrived on campus and settled into my small apartment, then went searching for my classroom in the 3-story ad building. It was just an old building. I found my classroom in the basement, so it was on ground floor, and there were windows all along the side, and it was so fortunate for me. The day I left, I locked my keys in my classroom, and there was nobody around. And I had to get in and get those keys, and I had work to do. So I looked at those windows, and I found one that was unlocked, and I pushed it up and crawled through, not being tall enough to just step over the sill to the floor of the classroom. Oh yes, I had looked around to make sure nobody was watching me. I just knew if they did, I'd be the laughing stock of the students in the academy for the whole year. So I was lucky, no one saw, and I was able to get in my classroom. Once inside, I started looking at the book from which I would be teaching for shorthand, and discovered it was a different book than what I had learned on, and the method was different. But the typing books, they were familiar. They were the same I'd had in academy, and I thought, why in the world have they not had updated their typing books? I thought they were kind of old-looking and old-fashioned, and I knew there was new ones better somewhere. But I also knew the school would not order new books for this teacher who was just going to be there for 1 year. So, as it turned out, I adjusted fairly well with the shorthand. And for the second year typing students, I ordered practice sets, hoping to add interest and practicality to the work that they would be doing. The year finished pretty well, and I learned a lot. I've learned also that no happening is wasted. God knows the future. He knows your future. And even now, He is giving you the experiences that matches what He has planned for you. Now, I have 9 commandments to share with you tonight. There were 10, and I doubled up on one. So, number 1, love the people you serve. Each person is important to God and therefore should be special to you. This is what matters most and makes the world a better place. Number 2, develop your understanding. Compassion is the capacity to enter into another's joy and pain. It is empathy with others, instinctively understanding their deepest feelings. Commandment number 3, compliment more than criticize. Cover your neighbor's fault with a cloak of charity. You may need a circus tent to cover your own. Number 4, do not become angry. You're right. You don't need to. If you're right, you don't need to. If you're wrong, you can't afford to. When you are trying to make a point, remember, assertive beats aggressive every time. Proverbs 25:15. Through patience, a ruler can be persuaded. And then it says, a gentle tongue can break a bone. I'm not sure about that. I've never tried it. That's what the Bible says. Commandment number 5. Do not argue. You may win an argument and lose people. Stay away from the attitude that says, in matters controversial, my attitude is fine. I always see 2 points of view, the one that's wrong and mine. 6, be kind. Remember, you may see the same people coming down as you did going up. It may be nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. How we do our job, how we treat our co-workers and others who enter our personal world gives definition to our character. Commandment number 7, have a sense of humor and a ready smile. A sense of humor is to a person what springs are to a wagon. It saves many jolts. 8, walk the talk of Jesus. His example is worth 1,000 arguments. Commandment number 9, establish a people-person attitude. Jesus was a master of human relationships. Study how he dealt with his disciples as well as others. So often the key to success is simply good human relations. And so to you who will be graduating this year, may your successes truly make this world a better place. May your failures be but stepping stones to greater achievements. And in the face of difficulty, may you always have the courage to continue. There is not a quote I want to share with you. Success lies within the individual. You can't blame things forever on society, the environment, your upbringing, your lack of education. You can't blame the government or God. You might as well accept the fact that you are ultimately responsible for your own happiness. And I brought a book to share. It's called, Where Will You Be 5 Years From Now? And what you're thinking is, what does she mean where I'll be 5 years from now? I'm just getting through to the 4 or 5 that here at Southern. Why should I worry about what I'm going to be doing 5 years from now? Well, those who plan usually get a lot further than those who don't. You've got all this time. You know how much you have in 5 years? You have 260 weeks. You have 1,820 days. You have 2,620,800 minutes. What would you do with it? What could you do with it? In less than 5 years, Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, Macbeth, and 5 other immortal plays. Fired from their home improvement jobs, Arthur Blank and Bernie Marcus created a business model called Home Depot and went public with their idea. 3 years after losing their job, their annual sales was $1 billion. Lots of things can be done in 5 years. I like what Dr. Seuss says in this book. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in a direction you choose. You're on your own, and you know what you know, and you're the one who'll decide where to go. And I'm sure you're wondering, what is that old woman getting a book 5 years from now? Well, I'll tell you why. I have a son who thinks I'm going to live to be 100. Well, that's just 15 years away. And I don't really plan or care about living to be 100, but I sure want to have something to do and be interested in life as long as I am alive. So I looked at this book. I found this book in the store, and I thought, you know, actually I got it for a family member, but as I looked at it, I thought, you know, 5 years? Maybe I have 5 more years? Someone said, maybe there's a book in there. So that's one of the things I'm thinking about that I may do in the next 5 years. After that, there'll be another 5 years, maybe, maybe not. But whatever it is, whatever time God gives me, I want it to be profitable. As I think whatever time gives you, you want to. And you've got a whole life ahead of you. So I'm really excited for each of you who are here. And I know that this room contains a lot of talent, and a lot of good plans, and a lot of love for the Lord. And I just wish you well in everything that you do. Now I'm told that there's time for questions, if you have any questions for me.
What questions do you have for Ms. VandeVere?
Yes.
How long after you learned and were teaching shorthand did that kind of phase out? Because I know my grandmother worked as a secretary and she did shorthand too. But I don't remember, she never, do you know when that started going to typing and when people stopped?
Well, when you got into the techie things, when you got into internet, when you got into the more in the technical part, you didn't have the dictation. I was doing things for Dr. Dietz, and pretty soon we had a computer. Pretty soon I walked in one day and he was on the floor in the office and he had his sermon all out, and it was several pages and he had them all taped, and he looked up at me and he said, now if we had a computer we wouldn't have to do this. Or it was a computer, or was it anyway, it was some other thing they called it. I cannot keep up with techie stuff. But it's wonderful as long as it works. When it doesn't work, I want to toss it out the window in a hurry. But it's just another thing in society that goes by the board. But think of how fast things are going now. You know, I am really upset with the phone, with the iPhone and my internet, my computer. They keep saying, you know, update, update, update. And every time I update, it's totally different. They messed up my pictures, my photos. I can't find anything. I have it all I just want to leave their hands off it. So that's because I'm old. I learn as fast. Which I always said I was going to grow old gracefully, and I was going to stay up to date, and it's harder and harder.
That's why you have a son-in-law.
That's right. I'm very thankful for you, Stephen. I just don't want you to get tired of coming whenever I call. Which, by the way, I have some things to go over with you. But it's interesting how I can look back over my life and see the different things that have happened that have gradually led me. I had no idea that I would be involved with women's ministries. I was working in a church office, and I picked up the mail, and in that mail for several weeks was a church bulletin from Pacific Union addressed to Eddie Wright. He had been a student there at PUC, and they were still sending him the church bulletin. In there was a paragraph about their women's retreat at Leona Meadows. And I thought, that sounds like fun. And so the conference president would come and see Gordon, and then he would stop by my office because he bought a car from my father-in-law, and And so he would stop by, and one time when he did, after I said to him, I said, you know, we have this wonderful camp over at Cahada. And if you ever decide to do something for the women in the church like this, I'd be happy to help. And when I said that, I was thinking I had the resource. I could tell them all about what was going on in California. They could make the contact and all. And that's kind of how it started. And then when he called and asked me to be in charge of it, we didn't know what we were doing. It was a new program coming down from NAD. And when I told Gordon Dietz that I was thinking about doing something like this, and when I decided I would quit my job at the church office, he said, what will you do if this doesn't fly, if this doesn't succeed? I said, well, he came down from NAD. And he just kind of grinned knowingly, and he said, well, not everything that comes down from NAD lasts. But it was a program for its time. God has blessed it immeasurably all over the world. And there will always be a need for that program, because we'll always have women who are not, they just need encouragement. We'd have women come, older women who went to a church where there was just young people. Well, at the retreat, she found some people her age. It would be just the same. A young woman would come, and she'd be in a church with old people. Well, she found some other old people. I mean, some other young people. And, you know, I'm getting lost. But anyway, it did a lot for a lot of people. There's thousands and thousands of people that have been blessed by that program. And so when you get out in the churches, don't forget that there are some programs that would be a help to your church members. And whether you're a pastor or not, you're a member, so be active and share your love and your faith with those with whom you come in contact.
Any other questions?
Yes.
I can't resist. You've been here for 60 plus years. Tell us a little
Oh, Bert.
Tell us a little bit about that and that guy named Wayne.
Well, he was very special guy. And he was so excited when the opportunity came for him to start this E.A. Anderson lecture series. And 60 years, Bert. That makes me feel really, really old. We had a lot of fun with it. I usually just came and listened, but we had. Oh, I'll tell you, I don't know what year it was. We had Evie VandeVere, who was the former Miss America, come and talk to us, and she was talking about disciplining yourselves. Everyone needed to take time sometime and just go without something. And so I looked around the group and saw a couple friends of mine and said, okay, I'm a chocoholic. I wonder if I can go a month without chocolate. So I talked them into doing it with me too. It was Sherry Smith and Sylvia Myers. And the three of us, we went a whole. I even baked chocolate chip cookies for the pastoral party and didn't eat a one. I did it for a month. I should have kept doing it. I didn't. But oh, Bert, there's so much. Well, I with my husband, the students would say to me, he's very tough. He's so hard, but he's fair. And he was. And I was glad for him at home, because if the kids had trouble with schoolwork, I'd just say, go talk to your dad. Except, I was really unhappy with him. What am I saying this for? When I started women's ministries and I had to take a budget to the church, to the conference people, and I wanted him to look at my budget. And he didn't. He wouldn't do it. He says, I know it's okay. I know it's okay. Now, then they did. They accepted the budget and everything I had in it. So But he kept a diary. Now Bert, he remembers things. He doesn't need a diary. He can tell me. We've been on some trips, and he'll say, well, where were you 6 years ago at such and such? And I said, I don't know. He knew. So we had some. Wayne did a lot of auditing in the summertime, and it just amazed me. They were the first time he went, I think first or second time. They were in Switzerland, I think, and they were having to audit all these different currencies from all these different countries. I had to figure it out. I was pretty impressed.
I'm just a little bit confused. Is Wayne your husband?
Wayne was my husband, yes. Did you know him?
No. I just now, I was just trying to make it clear.
Thank you. I'm glad to verify that.
He used to be the dean of the School of Business, and he was the one who helped found this lecture series. Thus, her presenting on his behalf tonight to represent VandeVere's influence on the School of Business and in starting the lecture series.
He really came and built up the department. He had, that was back in '56. And they did have a CPA program there. Ralph Davidson was kind of instrumental in getting Wayne here. But Ralph would come on Sundays and teach the CPA class. Another thing is in '58, we still had GIs coming for college. And these were older fellows, they had families, and they were working during the week. And so one summer, to accommodate them, he taught a class at 6 o'clock in the morning. So they could come to class and still work 40 hours a week. I'm so sorry.
What's the most exciting experience of your life?
The most exciting experience in my life? Well, it's hard to say because marrying Wayne was exciting. When we first came down here to college to look at the place over, we were expecting our first child, and it was really in the country. We came from Michigan, and Michigan at that time was really thriving. And I thought we were going to, we took a tour around the campus, and I said, you know, I will go if that's what you decide to do, but I wouldn't do it. And I also thought I thought teachers moved around as much as ministers, but not the one I married. I probably would have taken half the calls he turned down. I'm glad I didn't, because I couldn't have been in a better place when I lost him for support and so forth. But we educated all of our kids here. We had 4 children. And I said to all of them, I said, you have to take accounting. And because even if you don't go into business, you need to know your own business, and you need to know what's going on. And I cannot tell you how many students came back and said to Wayne, they wish they'd had more accounting. And it really makes sense. So you're a manager, but you better know what your employees are doing with the books and so forth. And so knowing accounting is really important. And so all of our kids took it, and just one ended up being an accountant. And I didn't, you know, and that's fine, but they can take care of their own business. And you know, we kept track of things, and I guess by osmosis, long before he got sick, I said to him one day, he was working in the office. That's nothing. I wondered, what did he do in his office? Well, now that I'm doing my own finances, I know what he was doing, so it's just taking me longer than with him. But he said, I said, you know, do I have to do this if anything ever happens to you? And he said, well, if you want to know where your money's going. And I found out I did. So I'm glad for the, he loved to travel. He was a good teacher, and he came by that honestly. Well, he was in his genes. His dad was an excellent history teacher. His mom was an excellent piano teacher. I took piano from her for 2 years before I ever said more than hello to Wayne. He was a good student. He was a very good student. And I just, I really can't believe here I am sharing all this with you. But I'm glad for the opportunity of doing that. I wish all of you well, and whatever plan you go, whatever job you get, just remember that your name is very important. The Bible says a good name is better than riches, and you're responsible for that. And also, I would say, in getting ready for this, I was looking, and I decided that Psalms and Proverbs and Revelation are three of the most important books besides the Gospels. There's a wealth of information for you business people in Proverbs. It's just amazing. I was really surprised when I was looking at it from that standpoint. So, and of course the Psalms are, David went through all kinds of things, so he certainly could voice praises and pleading and everything like that with God. I'm very, my marriage and my family, they were all very important to me. And the most exciting thing, I have done so many exciting things. Traveled. Probably one of the most rewarding things for me was my 10 years in women's ministries. Seeing the lives changed. Seeing the women become better students of God's Word for themselves. Seeing how their lives changed. And if they didn't leave the retreats and our meetings and our efforts, better people, better mothers, better daughters, better wives, better friends, most of all, closer to God, then I felt like we hadn't done well. I'm very thankful for that. That was a wonderful experience for me. I enjoyed my 13 years at the church office. It was fun being in, getting acquainted with the church members and I would answer the phone at home and I'd say, Cosdale Church, Evie speaking. Yeah. And at church I would say, hello, VandeVeres. So, it's nothing great, but every life is important to God, and I just didn't expect to see this many people. And I thank my friends who are here. I've got two of my co-workers, Beverly Holliger and Barbara Willis. Stick your head around. These two women, I want you to stand. These two, I want you to stand. These two women were on my first committee in women's ministries. They deserve a lot of applause. I'm just really happy they were here.
Thank you. I would say that in the next 5, don't you say, I would say public speaking might be on her list?
Yeah.
Maybe stand-up comedian, right? She was so nervous, so to speak, and I think she did a fabulous job. Let's
Thank you very much.
She did a good job of living her name in women's ministries. Beverly Holwager followed her suit. Beverly, I got involved in women's ministries in my church. You haven't heard this side of the story yet. For several years, and during that time, got to know Beverly, who became close to me and mentored me, and I became part of the Georgia Cumberland Conference Women's Ministries Committee. Not as an employee, but as a volunteer. And from there, I started working on official committees for North American Division Women's Ministries. And her granddaughter, Sarah, who is Professor Rhodes' daughter, who is one of my students in Enactus on our competition team, she now also is getting into women's ministries in her church. And so you never know what effect you're going to have on people far down the line. The influence that you're going to have and how far and wide it's going to carry. And so like she said, your name is your responsibility. Do well with it. And thank you, Evie, for being here tonight. Please give her one more.